We're going to go ahead and show the coating process, different coating techniques to how to coat the emulsion onto the screen. Once again, let me reiterate, this is done in the light safe room with your light safe yellow bulb. You do not want to do this in full light. That's why we're doing it right now, so you can see what we're doing on the video. So just take your cap off your emulsion. And then we're using the dual edge scoop coater. And you want to fill the scoop coater about halfway full. And it also depends on how many screens you're doing. If you're doing a lot of screens, you're going to want to fill it fuller, so you're going to have to fill it less throughout the coating process. But basically, you want to make sure that it's about halfway full and that you have an even reservoir of emulsion in the screen. So we're going to set it on the table, maybe let it sit for a couple seconds so it gets even, so it's not one edge of the scoop coater is not full of emulsion, the other edge is left empty. One thing about your scoop coater is that the edge is very, very critical. If you're not very careful, most of them come with caps. You want to keep the caps on at all times when they're not being used, because if you scratch this up, if you scratch the edge, or if it gets dinged at all, it's going to leave lines in your screens that you're not going to want. You want a very, very, very smooth coating edge. One thing that you're also going to want in this process is some type of block or 2x4. Now this can be done on a table or on the floor. I learned pretty much doing it on the floor, but using a table like this works a lot better because it saves your back. So I'm going to show you how to set the screen up for proper coating right now. You're going to want to take this block, put it against a wall or flat surface. Then you want to have your screen sit up snug against this at about this probably 85-degree angle. Now this is going to give, if you press on the screen, it's not going to give or move around at all, because you want to be able to put a fair amount of pressure on the screen when you're coating it. And the pressure gives it the thin coat that will give you your fine, crisp images. A lot of people are too scared to put pressure on the screen, so they'll coat it and use a ton of emulsion. A quart of emulsion should probably go between 25 and 30 screens, and maybe up to 35 if you're using a lot of higher mesh, because the higher mesh holds less emulsion because it's thinner, it has much more finer detail, so it holds a lot less emulsion than the 110 mesh. This is a 110 mesh that we're using right now. So it holds more emulsion because it has bigger holes. The finer mesh will hold less emulsion, and that's also going to affect your exposure time, which we're going to talk about later. So once again, to reiterate, we're going to want to give the screen, when we go to coat it, a good amount of pressure with our arms and our scoop coater. You don't want to not put pressure on it, because then you'll put too much emulsion on your screen and you'll have hard times exposing it. You're going to want to grab the scoop coater in your hands like this. Use two hands. That way you get a good even coat. Then you're going to want to come over to your screen. Start at the bottom of the screen and tip the scoop coater up. If you notice, this scoop coater has different angles on the caps here. So the first step is to tip the scoop coater up all the way to the screen. So we're going to tip it up all the way till that angle meets. That's going to bring the emulsion and let it give it a line, a beaded line across the screen right here. So once I see that line hit the screen, all that emulsion, I'm going to tilt the scoop coater back just a little bit, so we're not facing it all the way up, it's tilted back, and then I'm going to get a good amount of pressure, and I'm going to bring it up about an inch from the top. I'm going to tilt the scoop coater back so it lets all the emulsion ride back into the scoop coater. Then I'm going to clean the edge of the screen so I get a good and nice print on top. Now you always want to start printing with the flat side of the screen, or the shirt side, or the print side of the screen, because we'll explain this more later, but you want your emulsion to settle on this side of the screen. So we coat this side of the screen first and the inside second. Now most of the time you're going to use a one coat method. If there's different types of printing, more advanced printings, which you can read about in that book, How to Print Shirts for Fun and Profit, that use different coating methods, maybe 2-2. You can coat the screen, let it dry, coat it again, let it dry, coat it again. For high density printing, if you really want a thick stencil so you get a very thick amount of ink on the screen. But for most of the stuff you're going to do, you want to coat one time on the outside, and then one time on the inside. Coating on the inside second is going to leave a nice layer, smooth layer, a thicker layer of the emulsion on the outside of the screen. That emulsion on the outside of the screen, or the flat side of the screen, is actually, once your image is exposed in it, it's going to give the printing surface and the printing image an actual gasket. So it leaves a very, very smooth print. That's how you get your smooth, fine, crisp prints on your shirt or your sign or whatever you're printing. So we coated the outside. We're going to come in and do the same process on the inside. Make sure our screen's nice and snug in the back. Take our scoop coater, 2 hands snug. Bring it up to the screen. Let the emulsion roll onto the screen mesh. Tilt the scoop coater back. Good amount of pressure. Bring the scoop coater up about 1 inch from the top. Roll it back so the emulsion rolls back into the scoop coater, and clear it off. Now our screen is coated. If you noticed here, there always will be lines on the edge and bottom and top. Now you can take some type of paper towel or something like that and wipe those lines off, because especially if you're newer at exposing or at coating, your lines are going to be much, much thicker. So if you're drying a whole bunch of screens, which we're going to talk about how to dry them in a second, if you're drying a whole bunch of screens, this emulsion is going to drip down and get on other screens. So you want to make sure that you can wipe these off just with a paper towel or something like that. And you're going to mess the edges up with the emulsion, but that's okay, because usually your critical part of the emulsion is in the center where your image is going to be anyway. So now we're going to talk about how to set the screen up to dry. Once the screen is coated, remember we talked about you want your emulsion to settle on the outside or the flat side, printing side of the screen. So we also want to let it dry like this. This way, gravity will take the emulsion and bring it to the outside of the screen more than it already is. So you can take some blocks, like just wooden blocks, and set them up like this. Put a block on this side to hold the screen flat like that, like so. And that way they'll let the screen dry. Or what works much, much better, much easier, is actually using the drying cabinet that we showed a little bit earlier. We'll bring the drying cabinet over and bring our screen in, and then just set it in to the bottom or the middle of the drying rack, upside down once again. Now the rack's nice because it's already pre-measured. You don't get the block stuck on your screen. Sometimes if the block gets stuck on part of the emulsion, it's going to stick onto the screen. You're going to have to peel it off. It's going to wreck some of your emulsion. So drying rack works really nice. Then you're going to take your fan, bring it over to the drying rack. Once again, it dries in a light safe room or a dark room. And just turn it on. And that's going to let air circulate through your screen drying rack and let the water evaporate out of the emulsion, as we were talking about before.